Good morning. It is February 21st of 2022. This morning, you know, I've been going through these I am statements, and this morning I just I had this overwhelming epiphany about because it's all this draw, this desire to share my story, to share my testimony, which turned into this um, almost daily uh, channel or whatever you want to do. I mean, I do this video, and it's all about sharing the story of what God's doing, what I'm learning about God. Um, and so, but this morning I was realizing, just to give some backdrop on what I just typed for the description is 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, the ride started, and I had this wake up call. Um, I call it coming out of my work coma. And when I came out of that, I had, I was starting to see that the world was falling apart. And I'm like, oh man, I need to do something. And the only thing I felt I needed to do, I had the first inclination was that I had this plank in my eye because I was struggling with weed and alcohol and my marriage, and I was like, I got this plank in my home. I had to tell people what to do, and then all of a sudden, I had this overwhelming feeling that I needed to just let it all out, share my story, and it was more like I didn't really have the clarity that I do now. It was more of just I needed to tell my story of my past, and I felt like that was going to take the plank out of my eye. Um, and I just look at it now, and I'm just like, man, God is so big, and He's so interactive in my life. Um, it was such a crazy feeling, and I was just like, no, is this the enemy trying to destroy me? I don't want to tell my story. Um, and I fought with it for a year, over a year, until I finally came to the end of myself and I surrendered to God, and I just said, okay. And at that point, it had kind of come to it had revealed itself more. God had showed me more, and the song "Truth Be Told," and there's just somehow it developed into this challenge, this crazy challenge. And it was like the last week or two that challenge started to develop, and it was like a consuming thing in my mind over and over and over. I was like thinking of how and why or what I was going to do. And this crazy thing of going Facebook Live and just um, sharing my story and sharing my struggle and sharing the things I was ashamed of, and the death to self, and it turned into the death to self videos. And I don't know how that all came about, but it was definitely not me. It was definitely God leading me into it. But in that process, I look on the back end of this, and I see the freedom. I see the power of all of that. It was just in reality, what had happened is I finally came to a point where I completely abandoned myself to God, and I trusted Him with my life, and I laid myself on the altar. Um, and I said, okay, God, let's do it. And I said, I trust you. I abandoned myself to you, and here we go. And, uh, and so, yeah, and here we are now. But I look at it also is that it wasn't even just sharing my testimony. It was like he wanted to create a new testimony. And because my testimony before was all about me. It was all about, God was in there, but it was still had a lot to do with this is what God did for me. This is what da, 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 da. It was all about me and the things that I did because of God's grace and saving me. And now it's completely different. It's a whole different this faith, this relationship with God is far different than I ever imagined. It's so much deeper. And I went into electrical because I didn't go into electrical. I found electrical, and I became passionate about electrical because there's so much learning. There's so much. I mean, there's a lot. It's a trade that you learn in, and it's not just operating a crane and you're like pulling levers. And there's actually a challenge to it. There's depth, and so and now I get into this relationship with God, and there's just so much depth. It's like an endless well of understanding, revelation, experience, change, um, just getting to know God and who He is and who He's called us to be and why He chose us, why He chose me, and what His plan is. Because tomorrow is in His hands, and I just be sitting here like trying to trying to be patient and surrendered. So the thing is, I one thing popping up in my head this morning is a living sacrifice is what I portrayed is like I surrendered and I put myself on the altar and I surrendered to Him and sacrificed my life in a way that was I gave Him everything. Um, Even though I didn't give everything up in sense, I gave everything I had and all my plans, my desires to Him. Um, to work out however he had planned to work out. Um, but the thing is it's a living sacrifice. And so when you have a living sacrifice, uh, it's not tied down. The living sacrifice, I'm not tied to the altar. I can freely get up and walk off this altar. And so I have to continually, daily put myself back on that altar to surrender to God and to follow Him and to commit to Him. And it's just it's a life of it's a life that is different than I ever imagined, but it's so much greater. The reward is beyond any other reward. And the best part is like, yeah, I'm blessed, so blessed. And that's when that's when I want to come back off the altar and be like, oh, look what I did. But it's not what I did. It's what He did and what He led me into, and everything and everywhere I'm at, this relationship, all these things that I talk about. It's not because I had this intuition and I was smart and I figured it out and I got, you know, no, it's because God called me. He chose me. He revealed this to me and I was obedient and I surrendered and I abandoned to God. And through that abandonment process, um, He was there faithfully to rescue me and to bring me where I'm at now. And I'm just grateful for God. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And God bless. Have a great day.